Hello and welcome to this week's bonus episode of Planet Critical, the podcast for a world in crisis. My name is Rachel Donald. I'm a climate corruption journalist and your host. This week I spoke with investigative reporter Catherine Stewart, author of The Power Worshippers: Inside the Dangerous Rise of Religious Nationalism. Catherine joined me to explain how Roe versus Wade was overruled, essentially how the far right has been mobilizing, using Christianity, the extremist branches of Christianity, to organize over the past few decades to insert themselves into government, into education, into the courts, in order to grab onto power to enact their vision of ethno-Christian nationalism in the USA. To anyone tuning in that thinks, well, hang on, Planet Critical is a climate podcast. No, Planet Critical is a podcast for a world in crisis. And we know that the climate crisis is being driven by corruption, it is being driven by inequality, it is being driven by the powerful. The people making decisions about Roe versus Wade, the people seeking to have power over others, the people seeking to enact their vision of the world, is a part of the exact same paradigm of exploitation. This same Supreme Court that overruled Roe versus Wade is also planning on stripping back environmental regulations, human and civil rights. And if you don't think that the state of the world is related to the state of the climate, then you need to zoom out and look at the bigger picture. Catherine explains how the far right used the age-old divide and conquer tactic to gain control in the USA, that they fell upon abortion as a polarizing issue during a meeting they had when establishing how to get the public on board and how to mobilize against the left, and the culture that the left was introducing to the USA: progression, equality. So this isn't about being pro-life, this is about being pro-power. And it is clear that anyone with vested interests in grabbing and holding onto power will use any issue that they can in order to achieve their agenda. This is such a crucial example of being aware of who is in power and what they are trying to achieve beyond what they say they are trying to achieve. This is a crucial lesson in the weaponization of polarization, and a stark example of the system that plays into that very narrative. Leaders hide in the shadows behind movements, behind the movements that they create. We need to be naming names, pointing fingers, refusing to allow them to set the agenda. They say it's about pro-life, we say no, it's power. They say economic growth is about stability. No, it's power. Putin says his invasion of Ukraine is about Nazism. It's about power. Brexit wasn't pro-Britain, it was pro-power. And don't believe fossil fuel companies when they say that they're investing in renewables because they're interested in the clean transition. They are interested in keeping their hegemonic grip on the energy industry. Everything is pro-power. Establishment lines are merely agendas to mask their bid for power. And we have to stop letting them set the agenda. The thing that comes to mind is almost like a kind of verbal strike, not to say nothing, but to refuse to engage in the debate in the way that they set it out. Activists do this, organizations do this, but the established left isn't. And how is the media playing into this role? Something I mentioned to Catherine is the fallacy of objective reporting, which is supposedly the pillar of our free and democratic press. When journalists report the two sides of a story as objective fact, we need to be reporting on the agenda behind the statements. It's madness even that we have a world where we have journalists and then investigative journalists. Everybody needs to be an investigative journalist at this stage. I think fossil fuel companies are such a good example of this. These companies have known about climate change and have known about the destruction their industry has on the world for 5 decades, and they've hidden it. They hid the science, they hid the evidence. Why they are still allowed a seat at the table of public discourse is beyond me. And frankly, any objective reporting could still put an asterisk next to anything they say. By the way, they claim this now. They did also hide the evidence for 50 years. Then you are inviting the public to be aware of the fact that maybe these people aren't trustworthy. Maybe these people shouldn't be making decisions about the climate. Maybe these people shouldn't be funding COP or have stalls at COP, for example. Maybe their money should be nowhere near politics. You can't have accountability without transparency. And you can't have transparency without history. We cannot fall for moral polarization when an amoral group are grabbing for power. First, it's power over, then it's power to. And those seduced by power don't give a damn about their neighbor, about their environment, about the natural world, because they think they have some God-given right, perhaps, to do whatever they want. We're not going to have our freedom to look after the world and make it a better place until we get our freedom from them. I'm furious. And I hope everyone that's watching this is equally furious and galvanized. We've got to protect our social structures. We've got to protect our bodies. We've got to protect our world. We've got to protect our freedoms. Social progress is not just some natural evolution as the times pass. Social progress is fought for. Places like the UK and the USA, the West, have a longer history of imperialism, colonialism, slavery, inequality, exploitation than they do of providing freedoms and caring for their people and their neighbours. If we are not trying to claw forward into the future, we are slipping back into the past. Get your claws out, guys. If this is your first time watching Planet Critical, remember to subscribe. This is a political podcast. This is a podcast about the world in crisis. It's a resource for a world in crisis. What's going on and what to do about it. You can subscribe here. You can subscribe on planetcritical.com. I'll keep making Planet Critical no matter what. But if you want to be a part of the community and support it, you can do so at planetcritical.com or on the Patreon page. Both are linked in the description box below. Thank you for joining me today. Thank you for being angry with me today. I'll see you next week.